I know I won't have to challenge you because you've already taken the ball and you started to run with it already. And I just see great things happening with this organization under your hands. Thank you so much for volunteering. I stepped back and you jumped forward, and I just see great things with you being here. So I will pass this on to you, and I know you're going to do great things with it. Thank you so much for your service.
Thank you.
And if you haven't heard the story about how Sonia got involved or has a passion for adult literacy, you know, it's really a powerful story. And it really moved me when she talked about her grandmother, I think it was, who couldn't read and wanted to pass on recipes to the rest of the family. And that got her started with her passion for literacy. Thank you so much.
So I think everyone in the room can likely sense the reluctance of these two as they step down from the board. And I think once we make a commitment to serve in whatever arena that may be, I think it's oftentimes hard to step away from that commitment, especially when that commitment is here. And I think anyone who's worked with you two have felt that. And so I think you guys have been instrumental in picking great resources like Velma Jo. The first time I met Velma Jo, it was evident that she had the fire burning deep in her soul. So I commend you two for your service. I pray that I can be half the leader that each of you were, and that I can continue to do great things in the community just as you both have done. So I thank you both for the examples that you've set. And I'll tell you a little about my grandmother here in just a second, but I did want to share with you Kofi Annan. He was the secretary for the United Nations for several years, and he had some interesting insights into literacy. So he said, literacy is a bridge from misery to hope. Literacy is a tool of daily life in modern society. It says it is a safeguard against poverty and a building block for development. For everyone, everywhere, literacy is a basic human right. I know oftentimes it's quite difficult for us to understand in today's times how anyone could not have a basic education. So I can speak from my personal experience growing up. Dr. Britton had already alluded to my grandmother. She could not read or write. When I was in high school, she started some classes through a literacy program in my hometown, and she tried to learn how to read and how to write. I don't think she ever managed the reading, but she did manage to learn to write her name. So I watched my grandmother for years and years. I think she passed away when I was about 25, I think. Whew, it's been a while back. So one of the things that I remember most about my grandmother were her recipes. And this is actually one of her recipes. So she could not write, she could not read, so she had this methodology that she used that if you had a recipe that she wanted, she knew her numbers, she would transcribe it into this alphabet or this symbolism that she knew what it meant, so she could make. We've tried to figure out what this is. I can't quite figure it out. It looks like you do bake it at 20 minutes, maybe for 350. But she knew what it was, and she could bake that. So I watched my grandmother struggle year after year. She would get mail in, and she would hand it to one of my aunts, and she would say, "Can you read this to me?" It may be something from the Social Security office. It could be something from her doctor. She could not read it. So I know many times we take it for granted that we can read. And I don't think until we don't have that skill, it's not very obvious what it's like to not have it. So imagine you go to the doctor and the doctor hands you a list of things that you're about to have surgery, and there's 20 medications on that list that you're not supposed to take before you have surgery. But guess what? You can't read. What do? You know, do you stop and ask the doctor, hey, can you read me each of these 20? And then if you read it to me, I'm likely not to understand, because with reading skills also comes the ability to understand. So I watched my grandmother struggle, and it doesn't just affect that generation. I saw the impact that it had on my aunts and uncles, and then as they grew up, the impact it had on my father. My father was actually a 7th grade dropout. Now, if you were to meet him, you would probably never know. He's been a very successful man as far as being able to provide for his family, things to that nature. But when it comes to literacy and his ability to read, that's not his greatest subject. But fortunately for him, that literacy did not mean a recipe for poverty for him. He's the exception to the rule. It did for my grandmother. My grandmother lived on government assistance her whole life. She had no other way to live. I mean, if you can't read and you can't write, there's not a whole lot of jobs out there for you. So now we're in a new era to where we have what we call technology literacy. And so Dr. Brenton and Dr. Routledge and Velma Jo, they all had the insights that this was a needed skill in this area. So now we have basic computing skills that we offer. So how many jobs nowadays do you go and you apply for, and you have to be able to use a computer to do that? You know, we like to think, oh, no place here. Go to Walmart. Walmart has a computer that if you want to apply for a job at Walmart, you have to be able to sit down in front of that computer and use that. How many places do you go to that one you have to have a GED to start with? A lot of people don't have GEDs for one reason or another. Something happened in their life that threw their life off track. So this organization, I've seen my personal family struggle in multiple areas with literacy. So it is near and dear to me because I've seen it. I've lived it, if you will. So I think some more of the quote from Coffee that I'll leave you with tonight. It says, literacy is the road to human progress and the means through which every man, woman, and child can realize his or her full potential. So I thank all of you for all of your help with the organization and us being able to help people really realize their full potential. Whether it's through your time tutoring, whether it's through your financial gift, whether it's through your leadership on the board, whether it's through your directorship, Velma Jo. I don't know how we would do this without you. I'd like to extend a personal thank you to Ms. Condra Smalley and F&M Bank for the lovely, lovely facility here. If you haven't had a chance to go out and enjoy the view, you should. It is amazing. So thank you, everyone, and I guess, Velma, is it back to you? Oh, I can, okay. So.